Until now, we've been speaking about first views. First, as I said, we know, is the concept of beauty, which is really the concept of fragmentations that are blended into a holistic design, a holistic entity. It's also the concept of civilization, majestic civilization, and so on. And Oiz, of course, is Hatzlacha, the success, or another word for it is potency, the ability to succeed whatever you want to do. Those are the concepts at first in Oiz and so on. What I'd like to do today is to go into what's called the history of first Oiz, which is fascinating. Where does it start with? We know that these are the attributes of the Shekhinah, the divine presence. First, of course, is the integration of the entire reality. That Shekhinah, of course, is knowledge, is reality in a specific surah or form, which is the concept, of course, is that there is an incredible harmony of the entire reality, which is what we have to ultimately see. And the Shekhinah, of course, has Oiz, Malchus, it's the ability to perform, to do, and Hatzlach and so on. So, therefore, Klal Yisrael has them also, because Chadhu, we and God are really one. As I say, there's an identicality between God, Shekhinah, Klal Yisrael, Torah, and Eretz Yisrael. What's called Chadhu, it's an identicality. Without going into that and so on. But anyway, therefore we have Tferes Nois, as it said in the brachas in the beginning. Oiti Yisrael b'sif ara, who crowns Israel with Tferes, and Oiz Yisrael b'gvura, right? And Oiz Yisrael b'gvura, and he girds Klal Yisrael with might, gvura, and so on. In any case, so we have that. What is interesting to think about is the history of this. Where do we see this? In the beginnings. Very fascinating. And when we do that, we're going to come to certain answers, very interesting realizations of what's going on. And it answers a lot of difficult questions, you know. Actually, tonight we began Parshas told us. Tonight, the Kriya. And Parshas told us, of course, begins the story of Esav, Yaakov and Esav. You have Yitzchak, they didn't have kids. And then finally, Yitzchak, who was 60, had Yaakov and Esav, and that begins the story of the rivalry, if you can look at it that way, between Yaakov and Esav. But Yaakov and Esav is an incredible story. Most people don't have a handle on this, other than the fact what the narrative says. There's Yaakov and there's Esav. There's an incredible rivalry between the two. You know, Yaakov being Yoshiv Holam. Yaakov is the one who learned Torah. He dwelled in tents, which means he learned Torah. And Esav, of course, was Ish Sadeh. He used to go out, you know, he's an outdoors man, if you want to say that, you know. And then, of course, you have the rivalry that they have for the affection of their father. Then you have the concept of the brachas. The story proceeds in 3 parshas. You know, it's told us, Vayetzim, Vayishlach. What really is the story of Yaakov and Esav? It's really unknown to most people. A lot of questions you can ask. Why were they twins? How can 2 opposites be twins like that? You know, they were identical. They were not fraternal. Yes?
They were identical.
Of course, they were identical. You see that because when it came in the end, when they were burying Yaakov, they brought him to, you know, from Egypt, they brought him up to Eretz Yisrael, the Moras HaMachpelah, right? The cave of Machpelah, right? So all of a sudden Esav shows up and says, excuse me, I belong here, not Yaakov. He wanted to be buried in the Moras HaMachpelah, you see. So it said, Chushim ben Dun, Chushim the son of Dun, I think he was mute. He certainly couldn't hear. So he didn't understand what was going on. So he said, what kind of an incredible insult is this to Yaakov Avinu? You know, here he said, you know, it's a bizoyin for a body to be out of the kfura. So he took his sword and he could not face Esav from the front because he said he looked like Yaakov. So he went to the back and just cut off his head. And that's how Esav died.
Wasn't Esav more hairy than had red?
Whatever it was, but I'm just telling you, he couldn't face Esav, because Esav looked like Yaakov. There you are. And fraternals don't look like each other.
Right.
But in any case, so you had to go to the back of him, just cut off his head through decapitation, and the head of Esav rolled into the grave where Yaakov Avinu is not buried. I think it's mamish together, which is a very hashkafic, that the head of Esav belongs there, but the body does not belong to Moshe. But anyway, so there you see clearly that Yaakov and Esav looked alike. They were identical twins. Yeah, they were obviously with different care. One was more reddish, whatever, but essentially they were identical. Look, even identical twins have differences, whatever. So the real question is, there are many questions that you can ask about Yaakov and Esau. Why were they twins, and so on and so forth. But I want to ask a question, and that begins our understanding. If I asked you, how many of us were there, what would you answer me?
Initially.
You tell me 3. And if I asked you how many imors there were, right, how many matriarchs there were, of course you would say 4. So the question, of course, is why? Why are there 3 of us and there are 4 imors? That's the question. Ever speak about this, maybe?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. But I
Those who heard the show, they would say 4 already.
Yeah.
So
The answer.
Since you raised the question, you could say that there were 6. 4 tribes came from 2 others.
Who? No, how many of us were there?
No, I'm saying matriarchs.
There were 4.
But you could say that there are 6 because 4 tribes came from 2 other women.
To mother, yeah, but for some reason they never include Bilhah and Zilpah, which
Right.
is interesting.
Right.
Which is actually what they really were concubines. Or no, they actually probably were wives. They were really also daughters of Lavan.
So what's the
they were
difference
also
between-
daughters of Roch and Leah. Bilhah and Zilpah were sisters.
what's the-
Whatever the Mendel says, And anyway, in any case, but they're not considered as imors, which itself is very
They are mothers of tribes.
Yes, they are clearly mothers of tribes. But they're not considered imors. Anyway, but the beginning of the real story, and which is very important, is that there are really 4 of us, which we know. 4 of us, not 3. There's Avram and Yitzchak, and then there's Yaakov and Esav. Esav was an Ov. Most people do not know this, but Esav was a patriarch. In fact, there is a sefer called the Panech Roza. He's a Rishon. He wrote a sefer called Panech Roza, and he writes that Esav was twice as great as Yaakov Avinu. The gematria of Yaakov is twice. The gematria of Esav, I think it's 376, is twice Yaakov with the vav. So he writes that the avachus, the patriarchate, so to speak, of Esav is twice as great as Yaakov. It's astounding. So the real question we have is why they're 2, and why they're twins. What's going on here? And the answer to that is that there are different spheres, 10 spheres. Avram Avinu, he was an expression of a certain sphere called chesed, kindness. Chesed. And Yitzchak was the expression of a sphere called gvura, strength. And then together they merge into a sphere called Tiferes, which is beauty, which is really the harmonization of Chesed and Gvura. But what's interesting about Tiferes, so the question is who represents Tiferes? So we would assume it's Yaakov, because Yaakov is always considered an expression of Tiferes. That's true, but it's really not totally true. Why? Because Tiferes, which is a middle sphere, has 2 sides. Every center has 2 sides. There's a right of center, and there's a left of center. That's the concept of center. It involves the merger of 2 different sides. So therefore, there's a right of center, and there's a left of center. So there's a right of Tiferes, and there's a left of Tiferes. This is what happens. So what do we have? So Yaakov Avinu represents Tiferes, but the right side of Tiferes. Esav represents Tiferes, but the left side of Tiferes. Very interesting. So they both are manifestations of a sphere of Tiferes, beauty. Okay? Except both sides are represented by 2 people. Yaakov on the right and Esav on the left. As such, we have to ask ourselves, well, what's the job of both of these people? what's the idea of these people? And the idea would be that Yaakov Avinu represent the right side, and Yosef would represent the left side. Because fundamentally there are two jobs in Klal Yisrael. In the beginning, by Adam Rishon's job was to bring down a certain amount of ore, light. And what that would have meant is that he would have renewed or re-energized or re-transformed creation in a certain way. But what happened is when Adam sinned, he gave enormous power to an opposing force called the Satan. You see. And the Satan would have enormous power as a result of sin. I had mentioned, last time or whatever, that Adam Rishon was supposed to bring down a certain ore. And that's what he was supposed to do. But when he sinned, he gave some of that ore to the Satan. And I mentioned that the relationship between Klal Yisrael and the Satan is that when we do a mitzvah, we bring down the ore, or what's called the sparks of holiness. When we sin, the sparks of holiness that we would have brought as a result of the mitzvah goes to the left side, goes to the other side. So the Satan has them. And that's called the Satan is unique from the Kedusha, that the Satan energizes himself. So unique means he actually nourishes or eats from that. So therefore, the ore comes down, but the question is which side gets it? So when we do the mitzvahs, we bring the ore down and we get it. When we do the Avera, Chet, then we bring down the energy, but the Satan is able to urinate from that energy. I had mentioned many times that this is the relationship. If that's the case, then there's two jobs Klal Yisrael has to do. The first job is to take away all the Kedusha, the energy, the Kedusha, the holiness that the Satan has gotten because of the sins, to take it back, right? And then to bring down the rest. How do you do that? So essentially the way you do that is that if you are tempted to do a chet and you withstand the temptation, so that takes away the Kedusha or the divine energy from the Satan. That's what it does. So going to what's called the land of the Satan and to withstand the tumah, the temptations of the Satan, by withstanding it, you actually draw out the energy of the Satan. You deplete him. Very important concept, and that's really that's one of the ways of taking out from the Satan whatever he has. Okay, there are two other ways to do it. So mitzvahs draw down the energy, the sparks of holiness to us. To be tempted and to withstand the temptation draws out energy from the Satan. But besides that, but that's still doing the mitzvah, because the Satan tempts you and you do the mitzvah. Okay. But also, what also takes out the energy is tshuva. If you repent on a sin, so the Satan has to relinquish the energies that he has. Or if you suffer, yisurim, they also take away the energy of the Satan. So ultimately speaking, the avoid of Klal Yisrael is either to do mitzvahs, in which case they initially bring down the ore, light, energy, or they do tshuva, repent, and they take it out, or they suffer and they take it out also. So we're talking about three ways. But one of the important ways of taking out the energy also is to withstand the temptations of the Satan. Okay. So, if you do mitzvahs, so the job of Yaakov Avinu was called hispashtis kedusha, to expand holiness. How? By Yoshev Olam. You see, the concept of Yoshev Olam, a dweller of tents, right, isn't something that he did. It's really, that's what his job was, to sit in the tent and to learn Torah, and therefore to bring down enormous amount of Kedusha. The job of Esav is called Kfi Asura, Tachas Kedusha, to subdue or subjugate evil underneath Kedusha, by getting it to relinquish its Kedusha back into Klal Yisrael. So now we understand two jobs. There's the first job, which is Hispashtis Kedusha, and that's the job of Yaakov Avinu. His job was to learn in yeshiva, so to speak, is to learn Torah, and therefore to bring down the ore which is connected to Torah. Esav's job was to do what? Esav's job was to take out the Kedusha, the sparks of holiness, from who? from the Satan, and that's called Kfias Hora Tachas Kedusha. Very important concept. So really, they were both of us. They both had this enormous power to do this job, to do the job that each one was assigned. But in the end, since they both are part of Tferes, right? So therefore, that's why they're twins. You see, the reason why they're twins is because they both had the same job of bringing down a certain aspect of Tferes, okay? And therefore, they were twins. Except one was right side, the other was left side. That's the logic of what they were. And that's a very important idea, you know. Ramchal mentions this, these two understandings of Yaakov and Esav as right and left side of Tferes in the Kinnis Hashem Tzavokus, in that Sefer. And there are others that speak about this also. But it's a topic, it's a theme which is unknown, which is interesting. It's unknown. But now we begin to understand. Now, what we also begin to see is that the story of Yaakov and Esav is really the story of two of us. One which failed, Esav. Esav is a story of that failed to do his job. And which is really in many ways astounding that Esav failed to do his job. So what happened is that, and that was where we begin to encounter a real story. There are many questions which are answered by these two, this theme, right and left sides, and the fact of Yeshiv Aholam and Ish Sodeh. So Esav, Ish Sodeh, is a man of the field. Not that that's what he did. That was his job, is to go into the world and be subjugated to the Nisayon, the temptations of the world, and to withstand, be righteous in that place, and therefore to weaken the Satan and ultimately to destroy him. That's the job of Esav. He was an Ish Sodeh, not because he liked the outdoors, because that was his job. And Yaakov was Yeshiv Eholam, because that was his job, not because that's what he did. He did that because that's really what the both purposes of both of these people were. Very important idea, very interesting, you know. And this concept, believe it or not, will answer over 150 questions. Just this idea that I just told you now. Yeah, so many. I once gave a share. I have 15 cassettes on this. Each one is an hour and a half. I have 25 hours of this stuff answering these 150 questions. I'm just giving you like the tip of the iceberg, you know, and so on. But it's very important because we begin to see something else. Okay. What I just say.
Esav's offspring has to.
What was that?
Esav's offspring has to do that job now.
Esav. Well, yeah. Well, we'll say, yeah. This answers so much of what's going on. But in any case, what I want to begin to show you is this: if Yaakov Avinu's job is to bring down Kedusha, yes, because of the learning the Torah, what is that really? That's called Tferes, isn't it? It's the Tferes of the Tferes. But if Esav's job is to go into the world, to remain righteous, and to subdue the Satan, to destroy him actually, what's that called? Oiz. Interesting. So you begin to see the origin of Tferes Oiz, that in certain ways they're split. The job of Yaakov, which is the Kedusha, which is the Torah, is Tferes, is beauty. Because that's what the Torah is. The Torah is an achdus, is an amalgamation, or is a combining all reality under the concept of Einei B'Vado, to be what Torah is ultimately in. Okay, so that's Tferes, beauty. It's the ultimate idea. And the concept of Esav, to go into the world and subdue it, and be the boss, so to speak, you know, to be the shelet, or the shalit, whatever, right? That's Oiz. It's classic Oiz. The ability to go out and conquer the world and subdue it and bend it to righteousness. That's Oiz. So there we are. We now begin to see the concept of Tferes and Oiz as they exist in its origin. Interesting. You see. And that is very revealing. Once you have these understanding of these themes, there are many things that really fall into place on a whole different level of understanding. So, we now have what's called the fundamental structure of the events that will now follow in terms of these two jobs. And by the way, which I'm sure I mentioned once, that's the concept of why there are two Mashiachs. Mashiach ben Yosef is Ois. His job is to do what? Is to go into the nations and to destroy the Sultan, to take back all the Kedusha that the Sultan has. That's Mashiach ben David is the job of taking down the rest of the Kedusha. That's why there are two Mashiachs. Why? Because Adam, like I said, created the second job of the Sultan being unique or taken from the Kedusha, the holiness. So therefore you need two individuals or two forces. One force is Mashiach ben Yosef to take back all the ore from the Sultan and to destroy the Sultan. And the other job is Tveres, in a certain sense, which is Mashiach ben David, and he brings the kingdom of God.
So is Mashiach ben David really the one who's supposed to, once Mashiach ben Yosef brings back the world to the matzav of Adam Rishon, Mashiach ben David is supposed to really do Adam's job the way it was supposed to have been done?
Yeah, in a certain sense, yes. But that's the origin of the two Mashiachim, because there are two jobs, which now we begin to realize is split between Yaakov and Esav. You see. So we now have the origins in certain ways of first always, at least in terms of Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people and so on, Yeah. Although you find that also in Avram and Yitzchak in different ways and so on. Anyway, okay. So we now begin to encounter the story of Yaakov and Esav, first noise, to bring down holiness and to also to subdue the Sultan. Okay? What is interesting, however, there's certainly interesting ideas. One of them is that in order, now Esav is what's called an Ov. That means he's a Shirish Neshama. He's not just a Neshama, he's a Shirish. He's a root soul of many other souls that can come out of him. It's like a fire. There's a fire, and many sparks can come out of the fire, and the interesting thing is that the fire itself never gets diminished. That's what fire is. It never diminishes, no matter how many sparks come out of it. So the fire could said to be the foundation block that will rise to many other blocks and so on. So that's called a Shirish Neshama, a root soul. A root soul is a Neshama that can give rise to many other Neshamas, and that they are therefore called Nitzoitzim, sparks, all having similar characteristics to the original. So therefore, if Yaakov is a Shirish Neshama, and he gives off, he has the ability to give off many other Neshamas, Yaakov Avinu, that's Yaakov. And Esav is also a Shirish Neshama. Esav is a Shirish Neshama, which means he has an unbelievable soul. But then the question is, if his job is to subdue the Sultan, then he's got to be tied to the Sultan. It's the old story. If your job is to conquer, you have to have an incredible connection to that place that you have to conquer. So that's why you find that the Sultan was the Sultan, Samkel, I don't want to say his name because whatever, that is the Malach of the Sultan, of Esav. Yeah. That's why we find later on that when Yaakov fought the Malach, that Malach was the Sultan, which was the Malach of Esav. Now, the question is, what's that? What's he being the Malach of Esav? And the answer is because since he was a Shirish Neshama, so he was connected to the Shirish of Tumah, or the Shirish of evil, which is the Sultan, right? And they have to be connected so that he, by being righteous, can destroy the Sultan.
Is this why?
So in many ways, it's a gamble, If you remain righteous, which is what Esav should have done, right? Then you will destroy the Sultan by taking back all the Nitzotzes, all the Kedusha. But what happens if you decide to join the Sultan? Then the Sultan takes you over. It's a gamble in a certain sense. So the Sultan becomes your Malach, literally. It becomes your Yetzer Hara. That's why you find, and this answers a very important question. You ever wonder, it says that when Rivka used to go past in a shul, so Yaakov used to clamor to come out. right? And when that's and then when she went past the Avodah Zarah, then Esav used to clamor to come out. So finally she said to herself, "This is ridiculous. I mean, it's now it's partial, right? What am I supposed to do, right?" So she went to somebody, whatever, and so on and so forth. So the question that you immediately ask is, does this make any sense? These kids are not even born yet. They're embryos. If the embryos have such an inclination, where Yaakov wants to go out and bust out into a base medrash, and Esau wants to bust out into an Avodah Zarah, where's their free will? Where's their Bechira? Obviously Esau had Bechira. Why would the Torah call him a Rasha? Esau for Rasha, right? And you see that where Moshe says it's Esau Shonesi, I hated Esau. One of the VM, whatever. I don't understand this. If he has a Yetzer Hara that is so powerful that he's not even born yet to know what an Avodah Zarah is. Yes? So he's finished. He's doomed. So then why do we call him a Rasha? Ever wonder about that? Where's this guy's Bechira? We should all sit and be sorry for this kid, Esav. Instead of, he's a Rasha. What Rasha? This is the question. And the answer is, he wasn't a Rasha, really. He could have been a tzaddik. He became a Rasha. But then the question is, how? And the answer is what you're looking at when it has the embryo clamoring to get out, right? To go to an Avodah Zarah. That's not Bechira. That simply means temperament. That was his temperament. That he was incredibly driven to satanic temptations. But that wasn't him. In other words, every kid is born with a certain temperament. Temperament is different from personality. Temperament is what you're born with. Personality is what you learned. You learn how to adjust to the world based on the environment, your parents, your peers, and so on. A personality is a learned way of behaving. A temperament is a way you're born with. That's why you see kids born, Some kids they can't stand noise, and the kid's like 4 days old. And some kids just lie there. They don't do anything, Nothing bothers them, Kids are born with clearly different, not personalities, temperaments. And that's genetic. In many ways, that's genetic.
Blood letter.
What?
The Gemara says that if you have a temperament for blood, you can either become a shaykhit or you can become a ritzeich.
So that's the concept of, there you could say it's, okay, let's say temperament, whatever, okay. It could be personality too, but anyway. So what you're really looking at when you look at Esav trying to bust out and worship idols, we're talking about a guy, a boicher. He's not a boicher. He's an embryo. He's not even an infant. What we're looking at is the unbelievable temperament of a child to be seduced to be Oved Avodah Zarah, which when he's born he's going to have to contend with. You see, that's what you're looking at. So therefore, of course, he had Bechira. Now, if you're going to say, wait a minute, even if he has this temperament, but still, you're born with that kind of a temperament, what are you going to do? You know what I'm saying? So I will show you something very interesting. Esav was an unbelievably strong individual. Like I told you from the Paneach Raza. The Paneach Raza says, like I said, that the gematria of Esav is twice Yaakov, 376, with the Vav, Yaakov with the Vav. And he says that Esav's power was twice as great as Yaakov Avinu's. Now that is no small change. I mean, we don't even know what Yaakov Avinu was. We're going to wonder what Esav was. I mean, what that Paneach Raza is saying is that he could have been twice as great as Yaakov Avinu. It's astounding. So the question is, where do we see a demonstration of this? I mean, we certainly see a demonstration that he was like finished. He was an embryo, he was already running to Avodah Zarah. So we already see that side of him, what's called his tendency, his inclination, his proclivity to go completely to chet, with Avodah Zarah and so on and so forth. But do we see any tendency, or do we see any kind of power that he can subdue this? That's an interesting question. There's got to be something around in the story that says what he could have been, besides what he couldn't have been. The answer is there is something that reveals clearly that this man was beyond belief. That Esav was beyond belief.
But then where's Yaakov's Bechira if he anyway had a propensity to
We're not talking about Yaakov, we're talking about Esau. And you know where the answer is? Let me ask you something. What's the problem of Esau? What was he so great at? Esau he had two distinguishing characteristics for the bad. He was an incredibly arrogant person. Geus, Gaiva. It says, Vayivas Esav es ha-bechira, and Esau despised the bechira. What do you mean despised? I mean, you're talking about bechira is the spiritual inheritance of being the kohen in your family, because the kahuna wasn't for the bechor. So he inherited the kahuna, or the priesthood, so to speak, in his family, right? So how can you despise the bechira? That's what the bechira is, right? So arrogance, geus, gaiva, tremendous bal gaiva, and therefore he was a murderer. Because if you kill somebody, what are you really doing? That you're much greater than this person, you can kill this guy. When you murder somebody, you're making a statement that I'm a million times greater than you, and therefore your life is insignificant to my needs. You see, if I need to kill you, too bad. What do you mean too bad? Don't you have doesn't the victim also have a chashivas of some sort? No, there's no chashivas there. Because this man is interfering with my need, and my need right now is I gotta kill you. Murder is the greatest statement of arrogance, because I need to kill you. I mean, for whatever reason, you're in my way, whatever. So wait a minute, excuse me, how can we kill the guy? Maybe the guy is also choshev? I mean, guy's worth something? No. If he is against my need, if he opposes me, we wipe him out. As they say, you waste him.
You're looking at him as a
As
monkey.
they say, what?
You're looking at him as a monkey, so they could kill him.
Without going into what he's considered, the main thing is he's zero when I need to rub him out. Anyway, that guy, Esau was a Ritzeach, tremendous Ritzeach, The second incredible characteristic of Esau was a Baal Taiva. I mean, I don't want to go into his Taiva, but this guy was incredible, a tremendous Baal Taiva and so on and so forth.
How is he supposed to work on all this?
What?
How is he supposed to work on all this?
Well, at least give me some demonstration that he could have worked on this. Forget about it. Obviously, he didn't work on this. When he was 15 years old, he went out and murdered, what's his name, Nimrod. But at least, isn't there some demonstration? And the answer is. And it shows you one thing. You'll see, it's really remarkable, If I asked you, for somebody who's a tremendous Baal Gaiva, what's the most difficult thing for him to do? What's the reverse?
No.
Hachno. Very good. Hachno. Humility. And what's a classic expression of humility? Is to submit to authority. Is it not? You submit to an authority, right? That's tremendous. That's humility, because you're submitting to an authority. You know what I'm saying? You submit to an authority, correct? That's a tremendous expression of humility. But that's the exact opposite of gaiva, right? So the question is, do we find Esau with his geos in any way submitting to authority? What? Exactly. That's incredible. But I want to tell you something. It's not that Esau was kibbud avayim. No. Omer Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says the following. This is what he says. I was the greatest individual in my generation to observe kibbud avayim. Interesting. That's what he says. But I found that my uncle, my feta, Esau, was much greater than me. Again, I mean, this is what is being said. Omer Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. I was the greatest man in my generation in observing the mitzvah of kibbud avayim. But I found that Esau was much greater than me. Where do you see this? Because it's incredible. When Esau used to visit his father, he used to change his clothing into big day Yom Tov. I mean, obviously that's what they wore, He used to change his clothing into clothing that was appropriate for a king. And then he used to go visit Yitzchak. When was the last time you changed your clothing to visit your father? No. Yeah, excuse me, nobody does that, He actually changed, probably showered and dressed and everything like that, because he was going to visit his father. So Rabbi Shimon says this is unbelievable. He was the greatest kibbud avayim probably in history. But wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. Because he had the greatest geos in history, maybe, right? He was an unbelievable gaiva. So how can you, justify, how do you,
Reconcile?
You reconcile. Thanks, that's a word. How do you reconcile a man with this incredible chaos, arrogance, demonstrating the greatest submission to authority in history, maybe, right? And the answer is, that's Esau. Where he wanted to be righteous, he was. And when he decided to be righteous, it was unbelievable. And where he didn't want to be righteous, he wasn't. And when he decided not to be, he was the greatest man in history. It's like, the higher you rise, the greater you fall. This is what Esau was. We're not dealing here with a normal guy. We're dealing with a guy with unbelievable control. But he still had free will. And because he still had free will, he fell. That's what happens, At 13 years old, the Chazal tell us, he went out the Tarbis Raw, but nobody knew about it. Then at 15, he went public. Decided no more hiding, So Asa was not a mere person. This guy was he was an Ov. We don't understand what an Ov is. An Ov has a neshama, a root neshama. It's called a shirish neshama that can incorporate millions of neshamas as sparks coming out of him. And more than that, the neshama of an Ov is connected to all aspects of creation. So when he does a mitzvah, he illuminates with or kedusha incredible amount of aspects of creation. That's what made Esav so dangerous. Because if he is an Ov, and he is Makusha, he is connected to so many aspects of creation. So if he does a mitzvah, it's unbelievable, the illumination. But if he sins, what happens? Then he takes the kedusha of all that area in creation and gives it to the Son. Bad news. You see. And with that, without going into it, because that's not my intent in this year, you now begin to understand why Yaakov Avinu wanted to buy the Bechorah. Why he wanted to buy the Bechorah? Because Yaakov realized that this guy is a chayte, and if he's allowed to keep his status as an Ov, he will destroy creation.
Why is the Bechorah equal to being an Av? It just means that you're the...
No, Bechorah simply means that you have the priesthood, so to speak, of your family. But the fact that he's an Ov, but the fact that it's an Ov, if an Ov is chayte, it's not you and I chayte. An Ov is chayte, half the bria is destroyed. And you know where you see that? I'll give you one more. Like I say, you can answer 150 questions with this. I'm just, giving you little sprinkles. You know where you see that? How do we know? So Yaakov, because the question is, how do you do this to your brother? Maybe a guy comes over to you and says, I'm hungry. Your brother. So you say, you're hungry? Okay, let's make a sale. I mean, what kind of business is that? Even if it's a pot of beans, what's the difference what it is? Lentils, whatever. How do you do this? I mean, every Jew wants to be a hachnos ochem. We have hachnos ochem to everybody, a stranger, to your own brother? Come on. What's going on here? And the answer is an incredible answer. And the Torah reveals the answer. The Torah reveals the answer to what was going on. In one word. When Yaakov buys the Bechorah, or rather when Yosef sells the Bechorah, the Torah is going to tell us what's going on in one word. Which is the word? Who? No. The Torah reveals the whole secret of the transaction of buying the Bechorah from Esau in one word. And it's just incredible how the Torah does that. No? Guys can't guess, huh? I'll tell you. What does Yaakov Avinu say to Esau? Michra. What's the next word? Kayoim. Wait a minute. We know it's daytime. Okay. And what's he informing us? Sell me Kayoim as the day. Okay.
Right now, instant
what?
gratification.
Who?
Right now, Hayoim, instant gratification.
No, Michra Kayoim. Sell me as what?
You know what I'm saying?
Michra Kayoim, right? That's what it says. Kayoim. Doesn't say, right? What do you mean? Sell me as the day. What do you mean as the day? Sell me, so Pasha Pshat is sell me now. As the day. But, what does that really mean? So that's the gilui of what's happening. What happened on that day? Why was Esav so tired? Because he had just killed Nimrod. But why was Yaakov preparing lentils? Because Yitzchak was sitting shiva for Avraham Avinu. So it was a Suda where you make lentils, whatever, right, for the ovel. Yitzchak was an ovel. and he was giving him lentils for that Suda, right? Whatever, right? So what happened that day? Avram Avinu died. Kayom, that day he died. Or the day, whatever. But this was a period of the mourning for Avram Avinu. Why did Avram Avinu die? How old was he? So 175 years old. But he really should have lived to how long? 180. Because Yitzchak lived to 180. So Avram Avinu died 5 years before his time. Why? So Chazal say, so he shouldn't see Esav becoming a Rasha. Because the Rebbe promised Avram Avinu that you're going to die b'seva in a good age. Means you will not see the pain and the agony of seeing a grandchild become a Rasha. So he died when they were 15, because had he lived another 5 years, Esav would have, it would have been all over the place with his bishop. So that means, so what does that mean? That means because of the evil that Esav was now going to display, because at 15 he now became public, that means Avram Avinu died 5 years earlier than his time. Let me hear something. Do you have any idea what 5 years in the life of an Ov is? How many mitzvahs he would perform? How many kavonos he had? I mean, you're talking about a person that every day, bo ba'yomim, every day was saturated with Kedusha and how much illumination took place in the Bria. If you deny 5 years of that to a tzaddik, what are you really denying? An unbelievable amount of what? An unbelievable amount of what? Tikkun. It comes out that Esav denied Avram Avinu, which absented enormous amount of tikkun, rectification of the Bria. So it's not just that he killed Nimrod. He killed Avram Avinu at the same day. Right? Indirectly, he killed Avram Avinu. Why? Because he was an Ov. Esav was an Ov. Esav is so powerful, right? And that, therefore, we see the evil of Esav, that not only was it Nimrod and everything else, but Avram Avinu died 5 years before his time, which is 5 years less of Tikkun of the Bria by an Ov. Not like some local Rebbe. I don't want to make fun of Rebbes, but and so on. So that's what Yaakov said, Michra, sell me, Kayoim, as we see today what you just did. And if you don't sell me the Bechira, or I don't buy it, you're going to wind up destroying the whole Bria. The term Maram is in one word what the significance of the sale was, and why Yaakov was not even a machnes urich to his brother. Because every day that Esav had, now that he went public, was going to be machra the Bria. He already just killed Avram Avinu. Who knows what else he's going to do? It's astounding how the Torah, with one word, can illuminate the entire story. So you gotta look at that.
So say again the Kayom.
So Michra sell me Kayom, as this day reveals why I need to buy it from you. Because you just indirectly killed Avram Avinu. You just denied what? The tikkun of the whole Bria from an Ov like Avram Avinu. I got to get this stuff away from you. So I have to take away your power of tikkun so you won't have the power of hilkol.
So he wasn't just really selling Bechor, he was also selling his whole status as enough.
Exactly, of course, exactly. Yeah.
Where do we see that he, even though it's merumas in that, so are we saying that Kayom is merumas, that it wasn't just the Bechor, it was also the status as the Av?
Yes, exactly, yeah. But it's funny, but nobody knew this. So Esav just said, who cares? By Yves.
So what's the matter with those?
What?
If he didn't realize he's giving up his avahos, whatever.
Who? Esav?
Esav.
He did realize that.
He did realize.
He couldn't kill. Vayives. He despised it, which means, who cares? He knew he was giving. Everybody knew what the Bechira was. And he knew who he
how's
was.
the Bechira, though, equal to the status?
I'm sure Yitzchak taught his two kids. At 15 years old, they were incredible. The Iluyim should be Iluyim. And it says that Yaakov and Esav were indistinguishable. Right? Until 13 years old, you couldn't tell one from the other. They both davened the same Shemona Esrei, so to speak, right? They both learned Torah. They were both Masmidim. I mean, we hear Gedolim today that are Masmidim at 9 years old. I'm sure Yaakov and Esav were unbelievable. So, could you imagine looking at little Esav, he's 9 years old, and the guy is a mighty bucky. It's a Masmid Otzim. Because it says, Shneim, you couldn't tell the difference. Yeah, but we're not looking at 1 year old where you can't tell the difference. You couldn't tell the difference until 13 years old, even till 15. So we begin to realize that Esav was an unbelievable fraud. He's moedik tzaddik, at least in his outward appearance. We're not looking here, because if you couldn't tell, like I say, we don't even imagine what the Vilna Gaon looked at 5 years old. You know? Can you imagine what Yaakov looked at 5? And therefore, if he was indistinguishable to Esav, can you imagine what Esav looked at 5? Everybody thought he was going to be a God Lador. Everybody. You know? But that's life is. You know, Yochanan Kohen Gadol, 80 years old, gave it all up, as they say, you know? Don't believe in yourself till the day you die. And Yochanan Kohen Gadol died, he was 80 years old, and he became a kofer. You never know it. Tzidkus and Rishus, it's Talim Bechira. So therefore, the Torah in one word reveals why the sale took place. You see, Kayoim, as this day. In any case, so this is what happened. So Yaakov then bought the Bechira, which means he bought the whole concept fundamentally of Tikkun. And Esav could no longer do this, because he sold it. It's out of it, and so on and so forth. In any case,
So what's the kind against Yaakov? Why he didn't give Dina to Esau?
oh, wait a minute. Every story takes time. Yes. Yes. You don't realize, you have to realize the significance of Dina and Shem and Yaakov, which we'll get to, because that's really where I'm headed. Anyway, so we begin to have a whole different appreciation, really, of the story of Yaakov and Esau. It's a whole different story. Two of us, really. Each one has the incredible job in Ruchnias, you know, and one fails, and the other, you know, is successful, and they're only 15-year-old kids. I mean, what's 15-year-old kids? But they're unbelievable gedolim even at 15. It's like the Vilna Gaon at 15. We cannot even imagine the Vilna Gaon at 15, but we'll imagine Yaakov and Esav at 15. But Esav clearly chose his path, and therefore this is the beginning. Now, basically the story, of course, always is that so Esav just won the Tarbis Raw, and that was the end of it, finished, you know, which bothered enormously Yitzchak and so on, you know. But Yitzchak didn't know about the sale, so he thought that Esav was still in the Parsha. So he was enormously bothered by the fact that he's not living up to his potential. But you can understand a person that has an incredible Yetzer Hara, right? You can understand that he's going to fall sometimes. That's why Yitzchak was able to be fooled, because he didn't know that Yaakov bought it. Yaakov never told anybody. That's number one. And then because maybe he felt that he would aggravate all the parents, whatever. And Yitzchak thought that he was still in the Parsha and off, even though he knew that Esav failed. It was failing, but you figure, look, you know, even Yosef had tzaddik, right? He used to comb his hair, you know what I'm saying? He used to also do stuff that they didn't like, but nobody ever thought that Yosef is going to be a Russia, you know what I'm saying? Actually, they did think. But anyway, we get to that story. But anyway, so therefore, fundamentally what happens now is now Yitzchak has to give brachas or blessings to Esav. Right? Because that's the next thing we encounter in Toldos. The end of Toldos. And if you look at the brachas that he was going to give Esav, they're all materialistic brachas. That you should shem it, you should have from the fat and from the oil of the shemayim. It's fundamentally gashmistic bracha. Why? Why would he give Esav gashmistic brachas? Because at that time, what Yitzchak was going to do, since he was dying, he was going to give over his parsha. Remember, Yitzchak also had the parsha of Gvura, which is Oiz, right? And he was going to give it over permanently to Esav. But he thought Esav was still in the parsha, you see. So therefore, he wanted to give over what? Since the parsha of Esav was Ish Sodeh, is to go into the field, into the world, and subdue it by remaining righteous, when you're going to give him what? A bracha of materialism. That's why you find the brachas of Yitzchak by Esav materialistic and so on, you know. So he was going to give that, and meanwhile, of course, we know the story. Yaakov Avinu, he took it, and so on and so forth. And then and you really begin to see what happened when Esav walked in and said, "Here I am. You know, where's the brachas? You know." So Yitzchak all of a sudden sees Gehenna open up. The Chazal tell us that he sees that all of a sudden Yitzchak has a vision where Gehenna opens up. And it says, Vayichra Yitzchak, Charod Gedola Ad Me'oid. And we don't understand what that means, you know. You know what Charod Gedola Ad Me'oid is? It's like a psychotic fear. It is a fear that even Prozac cannot quiet. It's an unbelievable fear. But the real question is, doesn't make sense. If you were conned by somebody, Yes? What would your emotional reaction be? Would it be fear? Anger. So it should have said, Vayichas Yitzchak. And Yitzchak was fuming that he just got taken in by his other son, Yaakov, who just stole the brachas. So the question is, why was there fear? Should have been anger. Good question. Totally inappropriate. And the answer is? What's
He's
the
afraid
answer?
of his son.
Who? Which
He's
son?
afraid of Esau. Killing him.
Why?
Killing him.
No.
He's
Oh, you mean that
afraid-
Esau would kill him?
He's afraid that the son has all.
After all that kibbut over aim, he's not going to kill his father. I mean, that's like,
He's afraid the son has all this zehuma now.
Which son?
The fact that Asa did this, now the son is more powerful.
No.
More power.
No.
He gave Yaakov the wrong bracha.
He gave him the right brach. Well, he gave the brachas to Yaakov. He was the wrong guy. But what I'm saying, he should have been angry. He should have been angry, not frightened. I mean, it says, "Vayechrad Yitzchak charod gedol ad mi'oid."
Yeah, who's going to do Esau's job? I mean, it's all the difference.
Yaakov,
Yeah.
that's what Yaakov wanted to do.
No.
He took it.
What was he afraid of? What was this incredible fear? You know what it was? What?
That the whole Tikkun Oil was going to fall apart.
Which one?
That he understood that Asa was going to bring the Tikkun Oil,
And?
and Asa blew it. So now where's the Tikkun Oil coming from?
No, almost. No. Almost there. Almost there. You went down the road, but you took the wrong turn.
The Satan, is he afraid that the Satan actually got everything?
No. No. What was Yitzchak supposed to do? He was going to give the brachas to Esau, not Yaakov. Had he given the brachas to Esau, what was those brachas? The permanence of the inyan of Kfiyah Sarah, which meant he would have reestablished Esau as an Ov. And if Esau is an Ov that's sinning, Esau could be machud the Bria. That's what he realized in one instant. Wow, if I had given him the brachas, he would have wiped out the Bria. And how do you know that? Because he saw Gehenim. Asa was very good. He was Marama B'Peh. He was a fraud, but he was a great fraud.
When he saw what the brothers were going to do with Asa had.
And yes, exactly.
How do you see that?
And Gehenim.
It was Yitzchak.
He saw Gehenim coming in with an Esav. Gehenim doesn't come in with a tzaddik.
He came.
Not lately, anyway. It's Gan Eden that comes. When Yaakov came in, what came in? Gan Eden, right? Gan Eden. Right? So he was expecting, Asa walks in, and all of a sudden, there's the heat, whatever he experienced, right? All of a sudden, there's enormous heat coming in, and the fire's Gehenim. He says, what in the world is this? He realized that the guy standing in front of him, Asa, is an unbelievable Rasha. And he is about to give him blessings that would have made him what? The Inyan Mashiach ben Yosef. Right? That's when you realize that you almost wiped out the Bria, and he did. Kayoy means he killed Avraham Avinu indirectly. Isn't that what it means? So imagine if he would have given the permanent Inyan, Asa would have destroyed the Bria. Who knows what he could have destroyed? Because the ability of an Ov to wipe out incredible amount of aspects of creation is beyond belief. That's why he was Vayechrad Charod Gedol Ad Mi'oid. And now you understand clearly. The pshat makes sense. That's why. And he realized that, thank God he gave it to Yaakov, and then all of a sudden he realized what the score was. That Asa was a Rasha, and so on and so forth, You see. Anyway, it's a very important idea.
What did he bless him at the end?
He gave him the same material. Oh, so the Yaakov, so Asa said to his father, it's the father, Tata, as they say. He says, that's his son, and he loved Esau. Because, like the Zohar said, birds of a feather flock together. Yoav zineh is zineh. What that means is that somebody loves somebody else who's very like him. Yitzchak wasn't the Gevura, but it was an eternal Gevura. It's oiz. It was the ability to say no to self. Yitzchak is a Gibor, right? So he loved Esau because Esau also had to do the same thing, to remain righteous. That's why he loved Esau. It was the same pasha, you see, and so on. And all of a sudden he's standing in front of his son that he realized a Rosh Gomer. If he would have done that, That's the end of the Bria. Who knows what he would have destroyed, you know? But Esav said, listen, fought, I'm your son, you know? Don't you have anything? And then when he put out the 3 tears, he cried. Esav cried, you know? And Yitzchak, his fourth loves his son. I mean, after all, it's his son, right? So therefore, Yitzchak had to give him some bracha. You know, and Zoya says that the 3 tears of Esav is what destroys Klal Yisrael, because it invoked the rachmanos of Yitzchak. So Yitzchak gave him a very interesting bracha. You can't give him a bracha. I mean, you can't say, I want you to be matzliach. You know, excuse me. You know, I want you to be successful in your desire to destroy the Bria. No, you're not going to. You know, I don't care how much Yitzchak loves Esav, he's not going to do that. But what he did was something very interesting. Very interesting. Because the idea is, since Yisurin, when Klal Yisrael has Yisurin, what could they do? They can take back. So one of the forms of Yisurin or suffering is Golus, isn't it? So when Klal Yisrael goes into Golus, what they do is they suck out all the Nitzotzei Kedusha from the nation that they're in. That's why there's all the nations, you know, Greece, Babylon, Rome, Italy, they're all zero now. Why? Because Klal Yisrael took out all the Nitzotzes. That's why Russia collapsed, because all the Jews took all the stuff out, trying to be from. You know, the major kingdoms that Jews go through, okay, they're all antiquity. They're all buried. There's nothing left, because the Jews took out all the Nitzotzes and so on. But the interesting,
We haven't taken it a lot of America.
Well, I don't know about
you know why? Because America's Edom, Esav. Wait, but I'm not going to get into that. I'm trying to work my way to Tveres and Noise.
Quick thing.
But in any case, so therefore, so Yitzchak said to Esav, you know, I want to tell you something. Klal Yisrael anyway. He says, look, if they sin, you will subjugate Klal Yisrael. What's he saying? He's saying like this, look, if Klal Yisrael sins, they're going to have to go through Golus, Yisurim, right? And they're going to have to go into a nation that will persecute them. And the rule is that whatever nation Klal Yisrael goes into becomes the greatest nation in the world. Major nation. Because the Moshe will not mavaza his people. It means even if I have to send you in Golus, I'm going to send you into a nation that's, one of the major nations on earth. You know, because it's a tremendous bizoyan to be afflicted by Zimbabwe. You know? I mean, excuse me, not only do we have to go in Golus, these are the guys that are persecuting us. So he'll put them in Golus. Who? Babylon. That's the greatest nation on earth. Greece, Alexander, or Porus, Achashverosh. Rome. These guys are up there, so it's not a bizoin. So therefore, Yitzchak knew that whichever nation the Jews are going to have to go in to suffer, the Rebbe is going to elevate them to be a major nation. So that is where he rewarded Esav. He said, listen, what I'm going to do is make you the chief of all persecutors of Jews. If that's the case, you will be the greatest nation on earth. And that's your bracha. So you'll have the bracha, but it's only if your brother falls, then you become the greatest nation. You see? So there's a condition, a caveat, as they say. But fourth, since they will sin, obviously, probably, so therefore he gave the bracha and said that if they sin, kashet when he goes down, you will then be the nation to persecute him, and therefore you will be elevated by the Rebbe Hashem to a major nation status, and that will be your bracha. Perfect sense, you see? So it's an indirect bracha, which depends on the chatoim of Klal Yisrael. But in any case, so this is what's so far where we're happening, okay? And now we're up to where I really want to get to. You need this just all as an introduction of what the history of Tveres and Oyez is. We already see Tveres and Oyez, that Yaakov Avinu is Tveres of Tveres, and Esav is Oyez of Tveres, right? We already see that. That's the beginning, that's the split, the origins in Klal Yisrael, But now the question is, very interesting question. So, what happens after the bracha? So Yaakov goes out and he marries Leah. Why? Because Leah was supposed to be the zivuk of Esav, since he took. So what the Russian do? The problem is no of can be two things. Yaakov does not have the temperament to do the tikkun of Yaakov and the tikkun of Esav. Because in order to do the tikkun of Esav, you have to be a tremendous Baal Gaiva. That's what you need that temperament, because that's your nisoyan. But Yaakov is not a Baal Gaiva. He's a moedik onof. And Yaakov is certainly not a Baal Taiva. So he can't do this tikkun, really, of Esav. Only in a very limited way.
That's where Yosef comes in?
Oh. So what does Yaakov do? He does what he can. So since Yaakov assumed the job of Esav, because that's what happened, he gave up his original job, which is Pashtus Kedusha. And now he took up the job of Esav, which is what? Kfiyas Sorah, to subjugate evil, Tachas Kedusha. He had to go into the Sadeh. And that's why he went to Lavan. And that's what the Torah says, Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheva, and Yelech Chorona, right? What does that mean? So Rashi says, what does one have to do with the other? Because they're connected, right? So Rashi brings out another connection, that Tzaddik leaves it, it's an impression and so on. But now you see the incredible connection. Because since Yaakov Avinu accepted the job of Esav in Beersheva, he now had to go to Choron, which is the Klippa, which is the, you see, you must see the connection. So he now has to become the Ish Sadeh. Amazing. So he becomes the Ish Sadeh. Yaakov Avinu becomes the Ish Sadeh. Therefore he goes to Lavan. And Lavan have all these kinds of, Nisyonis and so on and so forth. And since he took over the job of Esav, of course, he also married Leah. That's obviously what happened. So he stays with Lavan for 20 years. Long time. 20 years. After 20 years, Yaakov Avinu says, hey, enough is enough, I'm out of here. But why? And that's the next great story, because no man can be an Ov twice. He cannot be an Ov, like I say, he can't do his job in Esav's totally. He can do his job at Esav, he can be temporary. It's called a temporary fill-in. But he can't do the job of Esav because it requires a temperament of what? Of Taiva and Gaiva. It requires a different temperament. So therefore the Bonshim did something which he never really would have done. It's called piggyback, or rather it's called a contingency plan. He gave half of the job of Esav to Yosef. So that's why the secret of Yosef is that he's a Chatzi Ov. He's half of an Ov, which is much greater than all the Shvatim, you see, which was never intended really. But since Esav failed, so Yaakov took over a part of the job, and Yosef got the second part of the job. And therefore, when Yosef was born, what happened? He went to Lavan and said, I'm out of here. That's why. So now Yosef could accept the part of Esav that Yaakov couldn't. And once he does that, then he doesn't have to be by Lavan anymore. What's the point? That's why it says, Vayihi kasher Yolad Rachel, as Yosef, he went to Lavan and said, I'm out of here. That is clearly ties the two events. The birth of Yosef to the fact that Yaakov wanted to exit. Why? What's the connection? Oh, so Rashi brings down the famous pasuk, right? And that's what you see. That Vahoyel beis Yaakov le'esh, fire, ubeis Yosef lahava, which is the secondary, and memela beis Esav lakash. That's the famous pasuk. But from here is where it comes from, because when that Rashi realized the tie-in, that the tie-in of his exit of Lavan is tied to the birth of Yosef. Why? Because now that you had the lahava, automatically you don't need Yaakov anymore. Beis Esav will be lakash.
But wouldn't you expect Yosef to be born to Leah?
Because no, come on, finish.
No, because what you mentioned earlier
is what
Leah
was for Esav, and Esav was
always. I mean, Esav was the tikkun kfiyas.
Leah. Who's the zivug of Esav? Leah. Yes. So she was in the Indian of Esav, right? So therefore, if she was in the Indian of Esav, then who should have Yosef been born to? Leah. Right. But we know he was born to. Yeah. That's really an excellent question. How will you even answer that? Because it's a very powerful question. Because it doesn't make sense.
Right.
Leah is in the Indian of Esav because that's his zivug. So if the Indian of Esav is to fight evil, to reign righteous, that's exactly what Yosef did. So then Leah should have given birth to Yosef. Instead, remember she was giving birth to Yosef?
Yosef needed.
What happened? So they switched. So Rachel prayed, or rather Leah prayed. Remember, she was going to have Yosef. She was going to have a seventh Shevet, which means that Rachel would have been even worse than Bill and Zilpah. Right? So Leah prayed, and Yosef was changed into Dinah. Dinah is a female Yosef. And therefore Rachel gave birth to Yosef. They switched embryos. It's a mess. Because Leah was mispal. Right? Fine. Okay, so we could say, okay, so really Shitaka was going to have Yosef.
And he gets married to Asnas, which was the daughter.
Later on.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But really, what you really find is that Leah, you know what I'm saying, who was a zivug of Esav, right, giving birth to Dinah as opposed to Esav. So is it all because Leah was mispal? Really, she should have had Yosef. And she was mispal that who should have Yosef? Rachel. But then the question is, why did Leah have Yehuda? Okay, you want to switch Yosef to Rachel, right? Really, who should have had Yosef? Leah.
Right.
So she switched that, and Rachel had Yosef. Right? But who's the Hispashtis Kedusha? Yehuda. So who should he have been born to? Rachel. So it answers something, but it doesn't answer totally.
Leah originally was Mispalel. When Leah was originally...
So she was Mispal Taco, okay. So I should have had Yosef, which makes sense, because Yosef followed the job of Esau. So instead of that, so Rachel took it. But wait a minute, okay, so, but Rachel was still Rachel, so she should have had Yehuda. Mashiach ben David. He spashed his Kedusha, because that's really the job of Rachel. Right? But she never had Yehuda. It was Leah that had Yehuda. Why? That's the question.
Was Leah originally was Mispalel so
That's your
That's
question.
the question. Okay.
Got it?
It's not mine, it's yeah.
So what's the answer?
Leah was
The answer is
Mispalel...
an incredible answer. What?
Leah was Mispalel so hard in the beginning, not to be that it could be it worked so well that she ended up having the Shbas Sakadusha. And her davening not to marry Esav.
No, she wouldn't have switched her to task. She just would have switched the embryos. That's all. You know what the answer is? Well, I remember I heard this Pasha was a tremendous question. You know, what's going on here, you know? Okay, you know, but you know, the Orach Chaim HaKodesh says something which is the answer. He says something which doesn't, maybe that was his intent. He doesn't answer the question with his Yisoid, but it answers the question of the Yisoid. When Yaakov married a woman, who was the woman he married? Leah first. Yes? What was the job of Yaakov? Hispashtis Kedusha. Yeshiva Holom. Yes? Who was his real zivug? Rachel. So she was really in the parsha of Hispashtis Kedusha. Yes? But who did he marry really? It wasn't Rachel. It was Leah. Correct? So Yaakov, when he was together with Leah, he thought it was Rachel. So his kavona, that she would be the zivug to him, which is his Hispashtis Kedusha, removed the Kfiyah Sarah from Leah, and he actually put into all a different Chelik Neshama, which is his Hispashtis Kedusha. Therefore Leah had Yehuda.
That was all answers only Ruvain. That doesn't answer Yehuda.
Who? No, it changed her. It changed her.
Was she being changed from that first night?
You're talking about Yaakov Avinu's kavona. If you look at the Orach Chaim, he says an incredible thing. I forgot the exact lashon, but he says we do not understand the kavon of a tzaddik at that point in time when he's with his wife. You know, the kavona, because remember he was thinking about his wife. Remember Yaakov Avinu said, he said to Lavan, "Come on, I want to marry her and I want to come to her," which of course means to live with her, right? So Rashi said even Grober people don't talk like that. You know what I'm saying? People don't want to say, "Excuse me, let me," so we can be together. And nobody talks that way. We're talking about Yaakov Avinu. But the answer to that is what? He wasn't interested in the pleasurable aspect of it. He was interested in his tikkun. He wants to get together with his wife because he's going to make shvatim. That's all the one that bothers him. I need to make shvatim, right? So clearly then, when he's together with his wife, and this happens to be Leah, what's he thinking about? Is it pleasure or is it tikkun? I mean, it's obviously with that. You see that in Chazal. It's even in the Torah. You know what I'm saying? He's thinking about tikkun. In fact, that's why he's even used that lashon. And I want to come to her. Excuse me, what are you talking about, right? So therefore, we see his whole kavana really is tikkun. Is the tachlis of the bria. So therefore, his kavana, and the Orach Chaim says this. You know, although he doesn't use this to answer the question, that's my chiddush, you know, but it clearly says something. And he says that the kavon of a tzaddik b'shas that time is beyond belief what it can do, and it can mishan neshamas. Look, we don't know what that means, mishan neshamas. Look, Leah, who is his wife, changed the neshama of what? Of Yosef to Dinah. That's a pretty good job. I don't know of any medical doctor that could do that. You know what I'm saying? That's unbelievable. To change a boy into a girl after the chromosomes have already done their job. You know, how do you do that? That's Nisan. You know what I'm saying? If Leah could perform this, I would imagine Yaakov could do at least that. And that's what he did. But what she did is change the sex of the child, the gender. He changed the whole deacon of the kid. You see, of his wife. You see, and that's what the Orach Chaim HaKadosh wants to say. That the kavon of a tzaddik is beyond what we imagine, and so on. So what he did is he invested Leah, who he thought was Rachel, which is his zivug, into the parsha of his pashtus
But
kedusha.
Leah should have never started with Yosef, because she became Rachel's job.
Half, whatever.
Why?
Listen.
Maybe,
you know,
maybe half of it is.
I was not. I was there. You know,
Yeah, Dina is Yosef, and they both are having Yosef. So Rachel's having Dina.
So you see, but it's much more than that. So Leah had Dinah, right?
But Dina was from Rachel.
If that was her job.
Really from Rachel. Rachel no shaykhs to that.
Wait. But so therefore, Dinah, right? Dinah is from Leah, right? That's why she was called the Yatsonis. She was aggressive or assertive. You know, she'd go out and do things, you know, which is critically important to the next area that we want to talk about. And you're going to understand the whole concept of Tferes V'Oiz, what happens. It's incredible what this answers once you understand this. But we're not going to have time. We'll have to do it next week. But right now, we're at the point in the story where Leah has been invested with his pashtus kedusha because of the kavon of Yaakov Avinu, right? And therefore, she will have Yehuda. Leah will transfer, of course, Yosef into Rachel, and Rachel's parsha therefore changes. Her parsha changes into what? Fia Sarah. Why do you think she's buried on the way? She's not buried in Monas Machpelah. As you will see, because the job of Yosef is to be isolated, and his Yisun is Mechapa for Klal Yisrael. That's why Yosef went to Egypt. We're not going to get into that, you know?
Okay.
That's a whole, you know, you begin to understand that this had enormous repercussions about what the lives of these people are, and so on, which we'll talk about next week. But anyway, right now, we're at the point of the story where, but apparently Leah still had certain aspects of, you know, that's why she was going to have Yosef. She still had certain aspects. But clearly it was enough to give her also the whole concept of Yishpashtis Kedusha, where she would have Yehuda, and so on. So we're at this point of the story, where now we have Yaakov is about to leave, he has Yosef, which comes from Rachel, and so on, and Yosef was going to take over half the job of Esav, right? And that's where we're at. And the next big thing we have to talk about, the next big story is... Who? No. Before Dinah. The fight between Yaakov and the Malach. It's critical to understand what happened with Dinah. Once you understand what the Dinah, you will understand Tferes V'Oiz. And once you understand Tferes V'Oiz, then you understand why Yosef is buried in Shechem. You understand a lot of stuff. How all this incredibly comes out of the origin.
Why didn't Leah marry Esau?
I find this is a fascinating way to learn Chumash. It's a whole different Chumash, literally. But the incredible thing is not only different Chumash, but it's the real story of what's going on, using the exact same psukim to understand the superficial story. That's what they